Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Cup of Joy. I'm your host, Ariana Joy Christie, and I am so glad that you are here. This is a space to inspire, to learn, to grow, and to challenge. Get ready to fill your cup and spread a little joy along the way. Okay, Lara and Sarah, founders of Dynamic Doulas, birth doulas, childbirth educators, women's travel leaders, and self-care advocates. Welcome to Your Cup of Joy.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
It's so fun to be on the other end of this.
Yeah.
Is it weird for you?
This is weird. Yeah. I'm thinking about how we do this to people. We just jump right in. We're like, it's going to be totally fine. And I'm like, oh, wow. This is really
I'm
weird.
I love it. Well, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you. This for me is like the perfect fit. I remember meeting you guys. So Lara was actually my doula for the birth of Callie. And I remember jumping on a call with you to just chat about even what a birthing experience with a doula would be like. And immediately after Mike and I had our talk with both of you, we were like, okay, like we have to have them at our birth. Like this seems so incredible. So for those people who don't know what a doula is, maybe can you give us a little bit of a background of what a doula really does and what it's like to have a doula at your birth?
A doula fills in all the gaps.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when people get an OB or a midwife, they think that they're going to get a bunch of educational support. They think they're going to get a bunch of hands-on support. They're thinking that that person's going to tell their husband that they should take some time off, for instance. And so a doula really steps in terms of educational support, physical support, emotional support, mental support. So getting you ready with all the education pieces, but then being there for you emotionally when you're unraveling at week 37, 38, 39, and then at your birth, really helping step up to be the hands-on support that you need, especially if your goal is to have an unmedicated birth, and especially if your goal is to not fall into a funnel of interventions within the medical birthing system that is predominantly a business. So that's kind of where I would say we fit in. Do you add anything?
We often compare ourselves to like personal trainers, wedding planners, or a Sherpa leading you up Mount Everest. Everybody who has their first baby has no idea where to start, and you really have access to all these experts, but you don't know until you find out what a doula is and how it actually works. But we just kind of hold your hand through the process. And there's this beautiful description in one of our favorite books that talks about a doula kind of being like the banks of a river. So like you're the water carving your way through, and we're just kind of there to be like, yeah, like you got this. Yes, you can have that as a desire or a goal. And we're just your cheerleader and your support person.
I love that. For me too, like when we were thinking about having a doula, for me it was um the advocating piece that was so important to me. I think that was like probably one of the main reasons that we hired you guys was I had been told like my whole pregnancy that I was going to go early. You know, this is your second pregnancy. You had twins before. It's a big baby. All these things lead to you giving birth early. So every single appointment I had, they're like, oh, it's going to come soon. The baby will be here anytime. And I just kept being like, okay, I need to trust my body. My body knows what it's going to do. I'd been reading many different books. I felt like way more prepared the second time, but I just knew I wanted to trust my body. But because all of these professionals were always telling me, hey, your baby's going to come so soon. It was like they were like the midwife might not even make it. Like call us the second you think you're in labor because we might not even make it there. It's going to come so fast. And so I had this in my head. Then my water broke and my labor was very long, if you remember. So I'll never ever forget, like when I tell people about a doula and just how much you guys really did advocate for me. I remember my water had broken in the morning. It had been like kind of all day. I had been having contractions on and off, but they were quite far apart, not regular. And the midwife looked at me. It must have been like evening time, and she was like, Ariana, really have to talk to you because if your contractions don't start progressing soon, like we're going to have to go to the hospital. We're going to have some type of intervention and we'll need to go to the hospital. And I remember my heart sinking because that was not part of my preference. Like I only wanted to have to go to the hospital if I really had to. I knew that that was a stressful environment for me and I wouldn't be able to be as calm and present and in the moment and mindful if I was there. And so I was devastated, but I was also in pain. So I was focusing on that. And I remember you came up to me and held my hand. You looked me like got on my level, looked me in the eye, and you were like, Ariana, we are not even going to talk about the potential of that until we actually need to. You're not even close to that. Like
Yeah.
it won't even be that until tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I was immediately like, took a deep breath and was like, okay, like I don't even have to worry about advocating for myself because I know that you are there to do that for me. And you knew my preferences and you knew what I wanted. And so for me, that moment is exactly what a doula was for me, and how it just, you guys really listened to everything that I said. You knew what I wanted and you were there 100% to advocate for that. So I think the part of being the advocate is so important too.
Yeah, that transports me right
Do you
back
guys
into
feel
that
that?
moment and how furious I was that she was even bringing it up, because
Yeah,
psychologically, that can slow down your labor. Like, this is not a conversation we need to
totally.
prepare for 12 hours in advance. If we're getting to tomorrow morning, that's when you have the conversation. You don't need to be racing a clock or thinking about what your body's quote unquote not doing. And also, physiologically, through our experiences, we know with a second baby, if there's toddlers around, you're not going into labor until they're in bed.
And also, you're going
Yes.
into the evening, right? Your cortisol's coming down, the moon's
Yeah.
coming up. Like, you're going to have a baby tonight.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're not talking about this till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just appreciated that so much because I think if you weren't there, I probably would have been like, okay, I have to go pack my bag. And then I would have been stressed. And then my body would have been stopping the contractions because I would have been in stress mode. Like, I think often in terms of birth, we forget about the natural piece to it, that our bodies were made for this and we know what to do and we're going to react based on our feelings.
Yeah.
And so you guys also helped me create such a good space to give birth in. Like I wanted to be calm. I knew that I needed to be calm, and I'm not a very calm person. So I feel like you helped with all of those pieces. And that's why like a doula isn't just like one of those things. You really helped support in all of that.
Mhm.
So maybe share a little bit how you started working together. Because it's
Oh,
kind of cool that you are this dynamic doulas. There's two of you, you're a duo. I know you have a bigger team than the two of you, but I think of you guys as the two of you. So maybe share how that came to be.
yeah. Do you want to do it?
Well, just one thing before we get to that, I was thinking about as you were talking about the physiological piece, and we're obsessed with animals and animal births because there's not a lot of politics involved in the animals. You just get to look at the physiology. So we're obsessed with cows and cats. And we talk a lot about cows and cats at our prenatal class
Love it.
because when you move a cow early in labor, that's when they stall. When you don't give a cow enough minerals in early pregnancy, they retain their placenta. When a cat's in labor, they go into a drawer. They want to be alone. So there's
Mhm.
all these things that mean that an animal can close up their cervix and run away if there's a predator. And we don't really have predators, but we've got this medical environment that's threatening us that we're a terrible mom and we could kill our baby. And so then what happens
Yeah.
is our body shuts down. And you're right, exactly that. Your body could just be like, actually, physiologically, I don't feel okay. So, like, one of our favorite things,
Yep.
and I guess this gets into how we work together,
Mm-hmm.
is we love coming back to the physiologic piece of birth. Like we both have
Mhm.
backgrounds in anatomy, physiology. Lara's a massage therapist. I'm a kinesiologist. So how we started working together was we go to the same gym and we found that we were
Oh.
unpacking births with each other at the gym. While I specifically remember this one moment, you had your blood clot, and so
Oh,
you had your legs up the wall,
yeah.
and you're like, "Come lay with me with your legs up the wall. I need to tell you about this birth." So we just be unpacking births at the gym. And so our
Oh my
business
gosh.
started with the two of us out of necessity of needing backups. Like
Mm-hmm.
birth work alone is really scary and lonely if you have no one to
Mhm.
unpack the stories with, and if you have no one, like you can't even go away for a weekend ever. The
Yeah.
burnout is way too high. So knowing that we had the same values, we'd done the same doula course a year apart, we were like, what are we doing? Why aren't
Gosh.
we each other's backup? And Lara was growing her own business really quickly through her massage therapy business. Had you started with a
Mm.
ton of cops?
I was like the cop doula of London, Ontario, which is really great when you get pulled over because you just run through the list and start dropping the names.
Doesn't work for a
That's
texting.
amazing.
Doesn't work for a texting and driving.
So yeah, that's when we started 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Our youngest are 9 and 10.
Yeah.
So we started when they were.
That makes us sound like we're married. Let's clarify.
Oh.
Many people think that we are married to each other.
Yeah.
We are not. We are work wives. But sometimes when we talk in like we's and us and like our youngest, that's two separate children.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lara's youngest is
Amazing.
10 and my youngest is 9. And I think we both did our courses between our two children.
Yes.
Because you have your first baby,
Oh.
all of a sudden you're lit up about birth.
Mhm.
And
Literally.
I love all things birth, and it's such a fascinating thing. And so then you dive all in.
Yeah.
So,
And I had a doula with my first birth, which was why I wanted to do the training, because my first birth was actually really fast and was a unicorn birth. It was awesome. But there were moments that would have been really terrifying had my doula not been there. I was 10 centimeters pushing at home and not planning a home birth. So then we drove to the hospital with me pushing in the back of the car. For somebody who didn't have a doula with them, that would be really, really scary. My husband probably
For
would
sure.
have been freaked out. But because we had Lindsay with us, we were chill. Like it didn't feel scary at all. She's like, you're not gonna have your baby, just get in the car, lay your head on my lap, and let's go. And we made it to the hospital 20 minutes later. So after that, I was like, if I had $1 million, I would pay her $1 million. She was with us for 4 hours. And I was like, I have to do this for women. Like, this is the most amazing thing. I don't know how anybody does this without.
And I would say,
It's so true.
yeah, the center of our business is women. I mean, I think women all go through their ovulation bursts of like loving babies, but like you always say, you take a kid over 5.
Yeah,
like
totally.
babies are not your love language, and babies are a ton of work. But I would say, like, if you take care of a woman, if a woman feels good, if she feels like she's in her power, if all of her hormones are working, so her oxytocin is in place, which means her endorphins are in place, which means when her baby comes on her chest, she can actually see it and connect with it, then that's where that bonding and attachment can take place. And there's exceptions to this, obviously. Definitely, I've seen beautiful births and still postpartum depression. But we feel like the trauma and the postpartum depression piece is mitigated when there is a good birth, and often breastfeeding goes more smoothly as well. So keeping and protecting and guarding women and keeping women at the center means that we know we don't even have to worry about the baby, because if we look after the mother, she will be well equipped to look after her own baby.
That's so incredible. I absolutely love that. And it kind of flows into the perfect why I thought you guys were the perfect guest for this podcast. So when I started this podcast, which was very recently, I called it Your Cup of Joy. My middle name is Joy, but I just feel like a lot of the topics that I was talking about on my Instagram page were about self-care. I'm kind of on this like big self-care journey, not that I'm the best at practicing it, but that I know and I believe and I've seen from personal experience that when I take care of myself, I show up as a better mom, I show up as a better partner, I show up as a better friend, I'm better at work, like I'm just a better version of myself. Yet we still feel like somehow when I'm doing things that are self-care, like working out or going for a walk or taking 5 minutes to myself, I feel guilty. Like I feel bad. I feel like I should be doing something else. And so I just want, for me and for other people, I want this myth that self-care is selfish to be gone, to like go away, and for people to really dive into taking care of themselves. And like you said, like postpartum, that is a perfect example of when that is so very important. Because I can tell you, I did not look after myself at all at my during my first birth. Like with the twins, it was all, there were so many layers. It was a pandemic. It was a traumatic birth. I was at the hospital. They were split up between 2 hospitals. Like I couldn't be with them. It was COVID. So like no one could be with me when they were split up. Mike and I couldn't be together. Like it was wild, wild, wild. I missed every single one of my postpartum appointments. Like the midwives were trying to track me down to find me to make sure I wasn't bleeding. I was just like not taking care of myself at all. And I lived with the repercussions of those actions for months afterwards. And so I think you're right. And the cool part about a doula and having a doula at your birth that I think people maybe don't always know is that you guys help with that postpartum period too. So maybe you can talk a little bit about why that is important and how you go about that for moms that maybe are struggling.
Yeah, I think that's huge, especially when you have babies in the NICU. Like that is next level hard to take care
Mhm.
of yourself. But I think the important thing to know is that even like 5 minutes of a quiet cup of tea to sit with your thoughts and maybe listen to some affirmations and just to take care of yourself for 5 minutes throughout that time would mean the world. And then you need your
Mhm.
partner on board to support that habit too. So, how we approach
True.
that is we address it in our prenatal class. We cover a lot about postpartum in our
Mm.
prenatal class and about how to set yourself up for success, how to plan what you love and how to facilitate those things and the people that can help
Mm.
you with that. So choosing those people, so maybe it's your mom, your mother-in-law, your sister, your husband, saying to those people, I really feel like myself when I get a Starbucks and go walk around Indigo for an hour. So as soon as I can do that and leave the baby or babies for an hour, I'm going to ask you, my sister, to come sit with the babies so I can fill up my cup. And another
Mhm.
way that we address it too is that that is how we take care of ourselves. We're some of the most selfish people that I know. we we put it
I
on our
love it.
and we sometimes it feels really shitty because we're going like to the gym and people are at home with their newborns, but we want to lead by example too. And by
Yeah.
presenting ourselves on Instagram, taking care of ourselves, prioritizing ourselves, it does feel like we're leading women in the right direction, hopefully.
There's one piece you were saying that you feel like you show up for other people in a better way when you do self-care. But I think a pivot for me was to recognize that it's and me too. And I
Mm.
am important and I'm worthy just for no reason at all, but just because I am a breathing human being.
Mhm.
So even if I do self care and no one else benefits, my husband, my kids,
Mhm.
my friends, my parents, no one else benefits, it's still okay because I benefited and I'm important too.
Mm.
And then also, I do see even now, like when I have interests that are serving nobody else really but myself, like my pottery habit that's expensive. My kids get to see that I'm a lifelong learner and that I'm using
Mhm.
parts of my brain that are learning new things. And they're curious about this new hobby that I have. And so I feel like there's always good things that come about when we say, I'm important too. And when I look at that last
Mhm.
generation, the one that raised us, that gave everything for their children in a bit of a martyr way,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to know, like, oh, my mom had a crap life cleaning my room, cooking for me, and didn't enjoy any of it. Like, did she give 20 years of her life with no enjoyment? And I would love that there would be, like, when I see her with my children, or especially when my kids were little, and I would see her relish being with them, and she'd get put on her baby voice and she would want to eat their chubby little thighs, and like, that's the joy that you want to see in a mother and a grandma. And so if taking
Yeah.
care of yourself means that you can have that joy back, then that's to me why it's so
Mhm.
important. Going back to taking care of women in the postpartum period, I think another thing that we're doing is just checking in often to see like where women are at. Another piece we talk about in our prenatal class is managing your social media, getting rid
Mm.
of it or getting a new account for those first 6 weeks. But being very conscious that you're in this beautiful, fragile, temporary time, and it feels like forever. When people say like, oh, the days are, what is it, the years are short but the days are
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
When you're in it, you're like, these days are not short, right? You're like, I know exactly the next time I need to put my nipple in this baby's mouth. I know that I'm
Literally.
in a very long nap here. I'm swaying and rocking and these 20 minutes feel like an eternity. So none of it makes sense, but in hindsight, it is this short, when you think about your Callie, like your next birth, it's like, how short of a time did I get in bed? Like, it wasn't
Mm.
very long, and you know
Really.
that, but you only know that because it's now your third kid.
Yes, it's true. Like the first time is so, so different. But you're right, it is temporary. And that's something that is very easy to lose sight of, I think, when you're in it.
Yeah, it feels
But I
so.
think that that mentorship from you guys is so cool to be able to share with people that, this isn't gonna be forever and you have support. And I think, like you said, setting up the supports beforehand is something that I wasn't really aware of the first time around. And so the second time with your support was so helpful. It was like a completely different experience. And the support is really the only way that I made it through, I feel.
Yeah. The other thing I like to
So,
reflect on too in that postpartum time, and even like moving forward as an example to our kids, is if I think, okay, when my children are mothers, do I want them to be struggling and drowning and just surviving? Or do I want them to feel open to asking for help and prioritizing themselves and still having their hobbies and taking care of themselves? Like, absolutely, I do. So that trickles into the
yeah.
postpartum and then also translates into why we started our travel little side hustle, because women definitely
Mhm.
have a hard time taking out the time to go on trips, especially with other women.
Yeah.
The life that I want my
Yes.
daughter to lead is that please leave your kids with me and go have adventures, keep traveling. Like, life isn't over when you become a mother. And I think that the generation before us felt like it kind of was.
There's a weird gap or a
Totally.
weird skipping. So my grandma had this thing where she was like, no mother who's just had a baby should touch any laundry for the first 2 weeks. And so that was like,
Oh.
I don't know if that was like, because she's from back in the day where you would
Yeah.
scrub it, like washboards. Like my grandma
Oh, yeah.
was still alive, she'd be like in her 90s now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that was very clear for her. She would fly over from England and she would do everything for 2 weeks. I remember, like, as an 8-year-old, I'd be like, Grandma, do you love laundry? And she's like, no, dear, I just feel it's something I can do.
I just picture her as Mrs. Doubtfire.
Totally, little.
Aw.
But then it's like the next, because my mom learned from her, my mom was the same. She
Mhm.
wanted to take everything. But we did
Oh,
hear from our clients a lot of like, oh, well, I did
I didn't get
everything.
any help.
I didn't get any help.
Yeah.
And I just was talking to a friend a couple weekends ago, and they have 4 kids. And he said it wasn't until my third kid during COVID, they had 2 women staying with them from their church for
oh,
2 weeks, just because they were all kind of locked down together. And they took over.
yeah.
They did all the cleaning. They looked after the toddlers. They did all the cooking, and mom was able to stay in bed. And he took time off work, and he was like, I just had no idea it could be like this for her. Because he's like, the first baby, no one told us, again, didn't have a
No.
doula.
Yeah.
No one told us that I should take time off work. We had a baby on a Friday and went back to work on
Yeah.
a Monday. So there's just so much out
That's
there that's,
wild.
yeah, when you say wedding planner, like,
Mhm.
there are just so many things that we can just say to people. They're like, here's how you set this up better so that you're going to have a better time and everything's going to flow better so that you're not finding yourself in a mess at, night 4. And even things like last minute overnight doulas is
Mhm.
something we can do. Like, if you have the hospital
Mm.
experience where you stay in the hospital for 2 nights and you were in labor for a night or two before that, let's say you got induced, you're coming home like an absolute train wreck.
You are a zombie.
Absolute zombie. And so
Totally.
if you can have someone meet you at home and be like, hey, I'm going to take the baby for 4 hours and you're going to go to sleep. And then I'll wake you up for a feed when the baby's hungry. Like, by
Yeah.
that next day, it's like a total reset and like helping you just get everything, like bringing baby home. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
we're just not as intuitive as we would love to
Mhm.
be in thinking. Like, I'm watching my hens with their chicks, and it's like, how do they know what
Yeah.
to do? They just instinctually know what to do, and they're depleted. Like,
Yeah.
they are depleted.
Yeah.
That mother's depleted. She is lighter. She's not been taking care of herself well while she's sitting on her babies, and she'll be depleted for 3 more weeks. So there is a
Yeah.
piece from like your body stores are ready to do this and be depleted, and your baby's actually fine to not really eat for the first 24 hours. I'm saying so many things.
So many
Sorry,
things.
I'm like over the top here. But yeah,
I love it. No, all of it is so true and so valid, and you're very, very right. And I think that that's this whole thing of self-care, setting yourself up for success, but our problem is just not knowing that. I saw a quote on your there's a fly in here, on your website that said invest as much time and money into your postpartum and birth as your stroller, your crib, and your car seat. And
Yeah.
I was like, boom, like that just like hit me. I was like, "Oh my gosh, the amount of time and money I spent on looking at which stroller I could fit twins in that would be comfortable and good and nice for me and blah, blah, blah. The cribs, the car seats, literally like creating my baby registry. If I put as much energy into my postpartum period as I put into that, wow, my life would have changed in that postpartum period, which is, I would argue, like the hardest period of somebody's life sometimes. Like that
Absolutely.
really for me was one of the most devastating, hard, beautiful, wild times of my life because it's so many contradictory emotions and things you're feeling and going through. And I just loved that because yes, it's the money piece, but it's also the time piece like you're saying. And we just don't have the education for that. Like I wasn't looking to say like, "Hey, what should I be doing postpartum?" I was saying, "Hey, what things am I going to need
Right.
Yeah.
on
Yes.
my
Yeah.
registry?"
It's interesting. The self care in pregnancy is buying the other care, right? Because you can't self
Yeah.
your way through postpartum. So I think the idea is,
Yeah.
where am I taking some of this money to pay someone else to be my village to take care of me?
Mhm.
Because we're not in a country or a culture societally right now where we have people around who are not working, who are just able to pop over at 11 a.m. to hold a baby while you get a nap or a shower. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
looking for the how do I pay for my village, which
Mhm.
I know we get flack for sometimes.
Yeah, we do. We try to change the narrative a little bit because every little girl is growing up thinking about their wedding and what they want for their wedding. And then you meet the
Yep.
guy, you think it's going to be forever, and then you start thinking about who is going to pay for the wedding, and that budget is huge, especially
Yep.
now, like upwards of
Massive.
$50,000 for one day. Nobody
Yep.
bats an eye at that. Not one person is
Nope.
going to be like, "Oh, that was over the top." They're going to be like, "That was a delicious meal. I'm so glad I went to that amazing
Yep.
party that was so Instagrammy." But if you had an
The
overnight
flowers were pretty.
yeah, if you had an overnight doula for one night, you're gonna get eye rolls from at least 3 of your aunts.
Oh, totally.
Like, it's just
It's
Oh,
beyond
so
unfair.
true.
well, I didn't need an overnight doula. What
Yeah.
is a doula? We didn't have that.
What do you mean you're not taking care of your baby at night? Like, you are taking
Yeah.
care of your baby by taking care of yourself, and if we just changed
Yeah.
people's expectation and just actually change how people think going into having a baby, just a 1/8 of that wedding budget, maybe not even, would
Yep.
change the foundation of your parenting completely.
We have a client right now who
Yeah.
just hired us for 6 overnights, over 2 weeks. They just had the baby like a week ago, and it's their second kid. And it's just been so flawless and effortless on their part. Like, there's been no emotional turmoil about it because he's like, we did this last time, we're doing this again.
Mhm.
And it's just this like ease
Amazing.
with which he just called us, made the decision, paid for it. Doulas come in. I'm like, how the shift's been going? It's like, great, we're getting some sleep. Like,
Yeah.
it's very simple. There's no this like
Amazing.
turmoil
Yeah.
about the
Yep.
guilt and the emotionality of it all, of like, how dare you not be suffering and like sitting in a corner crying,
Yeah.
rocking your baby with,
Yeah.
I don't know, let's say you had a C-section and you're supposed to be resting and healing for 4 weeks, but no,
Yeah.
you had massive abdominal surgery and also here's a baby to look after and breastfeed.
Yeah.
Like, excuse me?
Yep. No, it is so, so wild. A girlfriend of mine has said to me a lot. I don't know why, like, what it is that makes us think that we have to do it all by ourselves and that, like, you should feel so good when you do it all by yourself. And she says to me all the time, both in parenthood and in business, like, there's no reward for doing it alone. You're
Yeah.
not going to get a medal at the end or a trophy that says, oh my gosh, you did it by yourself. Good job. Like, there's nothing that says that that is important to do by yourself. And I think about that all the time because I'll find myself being like, oh no, I can do this. Like you said, my mom did it, or like
Yeah.
my, aunts and uncles did it. Like, it, it's so silly that we feel like we have to do it by ourselves or that we should feel shame for hiring or asking for help. It's wild actually.
Yeah, and it's actually beautiful to build, like, the connection of community.
Mhm.
We hear lots of
Totally.
like, "Well, I don't have a village," but how you get a village is by starting to act like a village yourself. So, offering
Mm,
your
I
help to
love
people
that.
who are having babies before you have a baby by bringing food or
Mhm.
going over and holding the baby or just sitting with them and watching reality TV and being a human,
Yeah.
offer yourself as a village, and then that village is going to come through. Like when we had our second,
Yeah.
we had a blood clot 12 days after, and our best friends
Wow.
immediately showed up with a gift certificate for Supperworks, which is a place that like
Oh.
you could order frozen meals. So we had meals for 4 weeks from all of our friends. It took none of their time, just their money and one person to
Amazing.
put it together, and it made such a huge difference. And that's a village. So if you don't have time, maybe you have money, and if you don't have money, maybe you have time, and you can show
Yeah.
up, you can invite those people into your lives, and that actually feels better than doing it alone.
Yeah.
Your cup of joy is brought to you by my go-to snack, Humble Potato Chips. Not only are these chips the perfect snack, they are also a female-founded Canadian company, and the owner, Alicia, and her family started their business here in Guelph, Ontario. They are the only certified organic potato chip brand in North America. An even bigger bonus, Humble Potato Chips are sustainable and they are doing good. For every bag of Humble chips sold, they remove the equivalent of 2 bags worth of plastic from nature and the ocean. The team then turns the plastic into eco bricks and are building homes and schools in underprivileged communities. How stinking cool. Enjoy your favorite snack and know that you are doing good when you purchase. Do yourself a favor and mix my 2 favorite flavors, ketchup and barbecue, for the best snack ever. Enjoy. You're right, and the impact is so great. Like, look at you still talking about that now and remembering how that made you feel, and for them, they're probably like, "Oh, like, it they don't even it
Yeah.
didn't take any of their time." Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's these simple things that you can do that really have such great impact. I think that's so incredible. Um, we talk a lot about moms when it comes to birth, and obviously the mom is doing the birthing. But something that I really loved about our experience with you guys is the impact that it had on Mike, my partner. He felt super supported. And I always think that that's such a cool thing. Like, we do have this approach of like only talking about the part, like the birthing partner, the person who is actually birthing the baby. But really, I felt, as the person giving birth, so much more supported by him because he felt supported. It's like this ripple or domino effect. And he speaks so greatly about you and the experience that we had with you, because he was able to be there fully present with me. He was able to really like be in the moment with me, experience the moment for himself too. And I think that is incredible. So do you think that self-care and advocacy for the non-birthing partner is sometimes overlooked? And how do we go about changing that?
Yeah. So we have this great quote that we say to everybody when we do an interview is, you know each other and we know birth.
Mm,
So this
mm,
expectation that anybody's partner is going to be able to go into their first birth experience or second or third and have any idea of how birth is supposed to go, they are never going to know what it feels like. They likely
mhm.
have not done any education. That I would say generalizing, that's the norm, that they haven't been educated at all because nobody's told them to.
Yeah.
And then they
Yeah.
go into this situation where their birthing partner, their wife, is looking at them being like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, I have no idea what to do either. So they have so much
Yeah.
stress because all they want to do is protect you from pain, from stress, from trauma, but they don't have the tools to do it. Where with a doula,
Mhm.
we take kind of the stress of all of those unknowns and they can look at us. If we look relaxed, they can be relaxed. Then they can show up for you.
Mhm.
And if something comes up along the way, they trust us. We build that relationship throughout the process. And then we have a really supportive conversation about it. And they don't feel like all of this weight is on their shoulders in this intense situation that they had no idea they even had to prepare for.
In the
Yeah.
stereotypical couple of a husband and a wife, the man would take that pain from you in a heartbeat if he could. Like, he wants to help you and he wants to do it for you.
You're
But
right.
especially in that
Mhm.
hospital environment where the man is relegated to the couch or the chair, where the woman is on the birthing bed in the gown that someone died in yesterday with the rails up on the side.
Like in a
Um,
cage.
in a
You're literally in a
right?
cage.
They don't know what to do,
Yeah.
and then afterwards the woman's often mad at her husband. She's like, no one gave any attention to me, you just sat there on the couch and played Candy Crush. But it's like, I don't know how he knew how to do anything differently.
Yeah.
So how you change
Yeah.
that is when we show up and we're like, hey, hold her.
Yeah.
Or like sway with her, dance with her, take her into the bathroom.
Mhm.
And so we never try and get between you. We're always trying to like oscillate around you because we know that
Mhm.
oxytocin is high when your intimacy is high. So we always say what gets the
Yeah.
baby gets the baby out, meaning not necessarily sex, but an environment of safety and intimacy are the same things that you need
Mhm.
for birth. So when we're there to help the husband or the man be in a place where he can actually do what he's great at, which is hold you, protect you, be in your
Love
ear,
you.
love on you, then that's
Mhm.
when your body can, your feminine like relaxes into his masculine. And definitely I would say women look to feminine as well in birth.
Mhm.
That's something where you lock eyes with us when he's like, you're doing great, you can do this, babe, I know you got it. You're like, how do you know? You don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, I know you can do this, you are doing it, I'm watching you do it. Then you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess she's probably right because she's seen this before. So then you lean on that feminine energy. But for the man, yeah, supporting him in a place where, the tension's high and we can help bring that down, normalize it all, and give him specific things that he can do. They're all over it, right? Like, and then modeling it
Mhm.
too. So
Yeah.
we only have to do a couple hip squeezes, stroke your head a couple times, run our hands really slowly up your back instead of this frantic rubbing energy that men often fall into because they're anxious. Then they see that
It's
it's
so true.
model, and then they fall right into it. They want to do it. Like, it's often men will say to me, like, they want to step in for us, right? They're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
I just did a birth this
That's
week
so fun.
for a midwife client. So like the birthing person was a
Oh,
midwife, and she's married to a family doctor, and they
Oh
still
my gosh.
needed the presence of a doula. And like she said to him, and he had to bring it up multiple times, that like the way that he touches her in birth will never compare to the way that I touch her in birth. Like she's like, I love you, husband, but this is completely different. So like be at my head and support me with your words and like a hand on me and your eye contact. But there's just something different that a doula can bring to the table. The other piece that's important for the partner is that birth, especially the first one, is often long and quite boring. So
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
lot of times what happens with people who don't have a doula and didn't do any education is as soon as they start having contractions, they're awake all night and their partner's awake all night. You're going to the hospital too early. You're being sent home. Nobody's eating. Nobody's sleeping. And then you're just starting
Yeah.
off on a tired, exhausted, undernourished foot. Where when we're involved, we make sure that the partners get sleep and the partners eat
Yeah.
and they're not fainting at the bedside because their blood sugar's not tanking, because we've been making sure that they eat at normal times and get rest because they really can't be depleted, so that they can take the reins when you get home and help you heal.
they always want to power
Totally.
through at like,
Yes.
it's like
Oh,
11.
I don't need to
Yeah,
eat.
or like
Yes, you
11,
do.
11 p.m. to 3 a.m. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to miss anything.
Yeah.
Go get some sleep because you
Go
know
to
what?
sleep.
He's going to need you at 6
Yeah.
a.m. You're either going to be holding a baby or you're going to be like supporting her hands on. So, like, I know you feel like you're good now and you can power through, but there's no advantage to powering through. And I
No.
promise you, I will wake
Yeah.
you up if you're going to miss anything.
Yeah.
That's so true. The food piece was a big thing. Like, I feel like normally if you weren't there, Mike would have been going to make me food or he would have been going to like set everything up. But by you being there and being able to do that, he was able to focus fully on me. The other thing about you saying like a baby comes out the way a baby comes in, like the intimacy piece and having that be like a good way to get your body to relax and to feel good and happy is so funny that you say that because we always joke that I kissed Mike more during birth than I ever have in my entire life. He's like, I got more action that birth than I've ever had.
That's perfect. This may, I
It's like
hope isn't too much for your podcast, but we always say like the best kind of feel like a threesome for us.
there you go.
Yeah.
See?
Like,
It is so intimate.
like
Yeah.
should I be in here?
Well, no, I
It's amazing.
she
Yeah.
always talks about like tears melt the cervix, but also smooching. She's like, if there's a stall in labor, send the couple to their bedroom, get some good open mouth kissing happening. And it's
Yes.
like oxytocin's flowing because oxytocin is the love drug, but it has a half life of a minute and a half. And it's what contracts your uterus. So it needs to be often. And I often feel like in in transition, which is that really intense piece of labor where you usually decide you can't do it anymore and everything's overwhelming.
Yes.
Really,
Yeah.
that's the part where you're asking your support team to really level up, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
asking them, like, I need touch every minute and a half. I need someone on my back and on my hips and on my face and my head and my hair and my arms, and just loving on me intensely, more and more and more, so that I can
Oh,
do this. And that's usually what I think of transition is like,
Mhm.
this is the point where she's communicating to me, level up your game. Give
Yeah.
me
yeah,
more.
like I need
And
you.
I
Yeah.
like, let me put more on you so that I can get through this final bit to get to pushing. So,
Yes.
One of the best things I remember you doing at your birth is we watched your wedding video.
oh yeah.
Yes. And
And
it was amazing.
we
Like,
have such beautiful family photos around that whole room. So it was just
yeah,
perfect the way that you guys set yourself up for that oxytocin flow the whole time. I
it
was at
was
your
set
wedding.
up beautifully. Oh, and it also is such a natural thing then. Like when you have the right environment and you're around people that you love and that you feel supported by, like it really is this beautiful thing where like I wasn't like kissing Mike because I was like, "Oh, this is going to be good for me." It was like a natural thing, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
so cool. Our bodies are incredible.
I love that. I
Um
think some of the mistakes we made in our early career was really being prescriptive about things
Yeah.
like that.
Very chasey.
Oh, have sex, more times than you want to in a few, like
Yeah.
that, to try and get labor going. And it's like, curb walking and all these things that we're like, you know what?
yeah.
Don't chase a contraction. Don't chase your labor. Just like you having your water broken for a day. Like, just wait
Yeah.
till you're just going to exhaust yourself
Mm-hmm.
by like
Totally.
forcing yourself to make out. Like, oh my goodness. Or like go outside hiking. You're just
Yeah.
going to get like so tired. Just wait for it to start.
Yeah. That's so true. I think, like, have said this so many times, but our bodies know what they want and what needs to happen, and so just trusting in that, I think, was, like, my biggest superpower during the birth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also will never forget my most, like, memorable moment of my birth with Callie, I think, was and with the twins probably when I see someone who is newly pregnant or they're asking about birth, I always say like it is the most incredible feeling. I've never had a higher high in my life than the second the baby comes out. You literally feel like a superhero. You look at your partner or your loved one or whoever is in the room with you. It might be your parent or your doula or your midwife, whoever. I just looked at Mike and he was so proud of me. I was so proud of myself. I remember being like, I did it. And
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, you feel like you literally could take over the entire world. Like there's nothing that you cannot do. That feeling is just like the most incredible thing ever. I could have 100 babies just for that feeling. So my question for you both is what is your most memorable moment as a doula?
Oh, that's a
Tough
great.
one, I know.
I would say the one when you said that about I did it, I definitely have like this constant reel in my head that's a compilation of women saying I did it. It's like I wait for it. Like when a
Yeah.
woman just looks up at the end and is like, I did it. And it's such
Aw.
a cool thing because it's like it really always comes, right? Where
Yeah.
they realize it. They've got their baby on their chest. Do you have a most memorable moment?
Ugh. So I don't know how. This is actually
It's
going to
hard.
be. Can you put a trigger warning on the podcast?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so I was at a birth this year where she lost the baby,
Oh,
and awkwardly, that is the most memorable experience, and not because it was bad. Like seeing a woman find strength in that and be able
Oh,
to
yeah.
heal and be surrounded by her family and come through it okay. Like, obviously, devastated, but be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel and be just so
Mhm.
strong and incredible. I think
Oh.
that's my favorite memory. That,
And so supported, like she knew
yeah,
exactly what she needed to do
yeah,
immediately, and she called the people that she knew needed to come see the baby
yeah,
and who would need to be there and pray over her and
yeah.
be with her.
And also, after the fact, because the birth itself was stunning, we didn't know that the baby wasn't going to make it until after.
Oh.
She still loved the process.
Mhm.
She's still a full believer in home birth, in physiological birth, in the power of her body. So I think to see that even in this circumstance where nobody could even imagine, unless you've been through it, what that would feel like and that you would feel that way, she still loves her birth photos and videos and loves
Oh.
the thought of having a baby again. And I think that is such a cool reflection on the process and its power.
For sure, and I think it goes back to having supports too, like, we are talking about all of the beautiful moments and how impactful that is to have support around you for that, but in my lowest moments too, like, I needed people to be around me, so I can only imagine having gone through that, that having people around her to support her and love her was she'll probably remember forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think when we go back to the beginning of like, why do we do this? There's some really terrible birth um, outcomes. And I don't just mean death, but
Hmm.
things like, for a first time mom, there's a 1 in 3 cesarean rate. No one's
Mhm.
planning to go to have that. There's a 1 in 4 trauma rate. There's a 1 in 8 PTSD rate. Like
Yeah, yeah.
PTSD is a brain injury. So you're raising a baby with a brain injury, you're having flashbacks. Like the suicide is not out of the question for postpartum depression in that first year. So like a big reason that we're doing what we do is to try and avoid the trauma, but to also like you can go through hard things, and that's a perfect
Hmm.
example. You can go through really hard things and you don't register it as trauma if you are met with eye contact, kindness, gentleness, empathy, compassion. And these are the things that keep you in your body. When
Yeah.
you have trauma is when you peace out, you pause, you can't fight or flight, so you fawn or you freeze.
Yeah.
And then now that time that you were frozen is the trauma piece that you have to reconcile later on, and those are the
Mhm,
flashbacks, and that's that piece that you just cannot seem to get through. And so
mhm.
that's definitely a huge reason that we're in this work, as well. But I don't
Yeah.
think you never really get into something knowing that's why you're getting into it. But I think after we kind of went through our own first births and then
Hmm.
through the course, you're like, wow, that's the big piece, which is what you're talking about too, the advocacy. Like
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
you wanted that there, to try and avoid those things.
Totally, for sure. Thank you for sharing that with us too. I know, yeah, birth is such a layered thing, and there are so many good pieces, and there are so many heartbreaking pieces too. So, thank you for sharing that. We're gonna switch gears a little bit because I'm so intrigued by your new business venture. So, before babies, I loved traveling. It was like part of who I was. I was doing a few trips a year at a minimum. And I don't even know why I'm saying loved as like past tense, because I'm like, well, I do still love traveling. I just don't do it anymore. Like since having babies, it's like if I'm traveling, it's either for work or it's something that is like for the kids or family, like also for me, but I'm not doing any trips just for me that are on my bucket list that I want to do. It's almost like you said earlier, like it's like you have kids and everything changes. Like you can't live your life anymore. You can't do these things that you loved. And I don't know why I feel like that, but I just like as I'm reflecting back, I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I haven't prioritized that at all." So you
What
guys have created
why do you
sorry?
why do you feel like that, Ariane?
I think because when I was reflecting back on this yesterday, when I was thinking about our conversation, I was like, "Why? Like, why has that happened?" I think there are so many barriers in place that it almost seems like, "Oh, it's too hard."
That totally segues into why we started this business.
Okay, amazing. Then case in point, because I'm like, okay, who's going to take care of the kids? Who's
Yeah.
going to make sure that, the house is taken care of? Who's going to continue to help with my business? What about my client? Like the list goes on of excuses why not, and then I just never move forward with it. So, tell me more about Women Wandering Wild and yeah, how this came to be because I'm loving this.
So what you said about the barriers is definitely one of the reasons we started it, because
Okay.
nobody has the time as a mom, especially a mom
No.
of young children, to plan a trip. And then to
Mhm.
actually execute finding other moms to go on the trip with you. Nobody
Yeah.
has the capacity to plan it, to look up flights, to figure out where to go, and then to find a time that works for all of you. So then you
Yeah.
don't have the people, you don't have the time. So we take that out of it. So lots of people come on our
Yeah.
trips alone, and you are provided with a group of new friends at the end of it. But the story of how
Yeah.
it came to be is really serendipitous and lovely. So Sarah's brother is an adventure influencer, photographer,
Huh.
guru. So she has traveled with him. So she was on a trip with him. I also have always been someone who leaves my kids at home and travels by myself. And
Love.
lots of people have made comments to me on Instagram about how great that is, or like, how do you get away so often? Or how do you make it happen? And during COVID, I started doing an annual hiking trip with a girlfriend.
Hmm.
And people were asking me, like, did you use a tour? Like, how did you figure out those hikes? So I just put up on my Instagram one day while Sarah was away with her brother, if I planned a hiking trip, who would be interested? And like 50 people commented and were like, sign me up. And I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
what is happening? So then I was like, okay. So I immediately bought the domain name and started an Instagram. And then Sarah
Unreal.
gets back from her trip and walks into the gym and sees me the first time. And the first thing she says is, we need to start a women's adventure travel company. And I was like, I literally bought the domain
She
name.
just looks at me. She's like, I already bought the page.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
It
all right.
was so weird.
I feel like we've been talking about it a little bit before, but it was like, I kept on having this like, oh, I don't know. And then
Yeah.
it was like on that trip with 22 people, I'm like, there's no part of this we can't do.
Right.
And then I just came back and was like, yeah, I'm ready.
So
And
we
like,
did
let's
it. And
go.
then 4 months later, we went on our first trip. So we
Amazing.
literally like opened it up, filled it within 2 weeks. So we planned a hiking trip to Sedona. 10 people came with us. And at the end of the trip, as we're all sitting on each other's laps around a fire at a restaurant crying because we don't want it to be over, like, we're like, can we start a commune and all live together? Everybody's favorite part was the connection. It wasn't
Oh,
it wasn't the beauty, it wasn't being away from the kids. It was literally just the relationships that we built on the trip.
that's so beautiful.
And I feel like
I love that.
that's the piece that's so special to me is like the taking care of women is still at the center and the core of what we're doing. We're doing it in a beautiful place with an amazing Airbnb,
Yeah.
with delicious food and activities, experiences, adventures. But at the core of it, we have no interest in having these flighty relationships with anybody. So like
Mhm.
literally day one, we sat around the pool for 2.5 hours, all got a sunburn, and we did rosebud thorn. So like what in your life
Oh,
right now is hard? What is beautiful? What are you looking forward to? And I would say like nearly everyone cried talking
Mhm.
and we're so transparent
oh.
and honest about what the things were that was hard in their life right now. And it was like
Mhm.
all of a sudden all the comparisonitis, all the jealousy, because we had women there from age 28 to 62, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot
Wow.
of positioning or like where do I fit here? And oh, I didn't come with a friend or I came alone or like who am I in this?
Some didn't have children.
I don't have a
Yeah.
kid, like I have grandchildren, whatever. And so sharing like these core things, it was like everyone's like, wow, you're a human, I'm a human, you're going through some hard things. I see you, I love you, I trust you. And it was like from
Mhm.
that day on, we
It
really
completely shifted.
we had no drama. Like we
Yeah.
really didn't have any sort of like grimy things where I mean there was the odd like, hey guys, let's get out the door. It was the
Yeah.
same person is always last out the door.
Yeah.
And you know, some people are more organized than others.
Yeah.
But like when you're with people for 5 days, it just wasn't enough time for it to be like it's not a full blown year roommate situation.
Yeah.
And it was
Totally.
beautiful. Like and everyone would then be in connection with it, someone new on the hikes and like
Yeah.
talk about these
I
like
love that.
huge life things. Like nothing was off the table. I feel like
Yeah. All of
all the
everybody's
big
deepest
things.
shit was on the table.
Totally.
So then when you would find yourself walking with somebody who you hadn't yet, you would just be like, tell me more about your divorce.
Yeah.
Like there's no superficial conversations happening. You're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
diving right in with everybody.
Totally.
And yeah, the connection
Incredible.
is just wild.
Yeah.
But we truly are experts at facilitating it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love that so much, and the connection piece is so cool. I, um, was talking to friends a little while ago. We are part of a group that does some travel stuff together, and these people we only see a few times a year, and they've become some of our best friends, even though we spend limited times with them. And I was talking to Mike about it, and I just truly think when you experience something out of the ordinary with somebody, your connection to them is incredible. Like that just strengthens so much. So I think when you embark on a journey together like that, you're leaving your kids maybe for the first time. You're doing that, like going outside of your comfort zone. You're in a neat, like new place. You're experiencing something new, pushing the boundaries a little bit. Those people become so close to you. And sometimes those are relationships that will last a lifetime and
Yeah.
be closer than even like your childhood best friend who you've experienced tons of life with. There's so much to be said about going through something experiential with somebody and creating closeness through
It's
that.
truly
So that's so cool.
transformative. And a lot of us were having trouble with like in the weeks after the trip, we would all be posting in the group chat being like, I can't even explain to people like how life-changing these 6 days were. Like it's
Aw.
magical. And I think one of the coolest things is there was a lot of people on that trip that the timing was not right for them to go on that trip, but their
Mhm.
intuition said they had to do it anyways. So like
I
for
love that.
example, there was one mom there whose daughter had just been diagnosed with a very rare genetic disorder and like
Oh.
their life was in chaos. They were moving, but she just felt a calling that like she needed to be there.
That's incredible, and that goes back to the self-care piece, like, she now probably feels more herself, more whole, more able to be there for her family, and it's almost like a little recharge, I feel like, that is so important that we definitely, as a group, as a collective, do not prioritize, like, a lot of us would be drawn to say, "Oh, it's off the table for me now, like, I'm not able to go," so how incredible that she was able to really be there and be present, and I'm sure that's impactful for her for the rest of her life probably.
And you can even
That's
actually
amazing.
see women doing their women thing. So we have our next trip planned. We have 5 spots left. We're going to Mexico in December. And
Fun.
yeah, so if you're listening to this and you want to come, let us know.
That's
Um,
fun.
you can, yeah, of course. So but you can see, like, we'll put up a post and be like, are you coming on this trip or the next trip? And there's like 100 votes for the next trip and 6 for this trip. And you're like, see, I see what you're doing. You're saying, I'll come to the next one. The timing will be right for the next one.
Eventually.
I'll make it
Mhm.
happen for the next one. And I'm like, sorry to break it to you guys. There's actually not going to be 100 spots on the next one. There's only going to be
Totally.
12. And
Yeah.
there's always going to be an excuse to not go. There's always
Mhm.
going to be a reason. Something can always come up. But unless you
Totally.
start actually like pushing past the guilt, because you're all going to have the guilt, and just putting the things in place and planning it and making it happen, you're just never going to make it happen.
It's amazing the catastrophizing stories that we tell ourselves. I went on my first trip when my twins were 18 months. We went to Dominican for four nights. And you tell yourself that like they're going to end up in the hospital and I'm going to be away or something terrible is going to happen. Or I remember getting there that first night. It's never great to arrive at a resort in the dark because all your looming thoughts and it doesn't even look that great. And
Yeah.
you're just kind of like, oh man. And I was like, man, the kids would just love this so much. They would love to play in the sand, all these like mom feelings. Right? The
Yep.
next thing I woke up, I'm laying on the beach with my drink and my book, and I'm like, man, this is epic. This is amazing. I can close my eyes and I don't have to worry about a kid drowning. And
Yeah.
the reality,
Literally.
yeah, like the odds, yeah, something could go wrong.
But everything is figure outable.
It is.
Everything.
And then the reality is like you're leaving your kids with either your partner because you're coming on a women's trip, or if you're going with your partner and you've left your kids, you're leaving them with your parents or someone that you trust. And the
Yeah.
likelihood is it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And often I think too, like if something were to happen, then the person that I would call to help would be the person that's taking care of them
Totally.
already. So
They
like
can,
they're well equipped.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, well, that's incredible. And so where can people find more information about this?
So we have an Instagram right now. We ironically have not built a page with the domain name we own yet, but the Instagram
Oh,
has been Wandering Wild.
okay.
So yeah, find us there and join our next trip, please. So we're trying to do kind of like a more retreaty, relaxing, hot one once a year,
Mm,
and then more of an active, hiking, adventure one also once a year.
If you need to be
incredible.
convinced, your vitamin D stores are literally gone by 16 weeks. So I usually figure by the end of like September is when I'm like done fully being outside in a tank top and shorts. Maybe and so then by the time you're at December 1st to 6th, like your vitamin D levels are in the toilet.
Yeah.
So to me, this feels like just the perfect time right before you go into the Christmas season where you're just gonna like charge back up. You're gonna get tons of vitamin D. You're gonna charge up on your female friendships, and then you're gonna go home to be into the rush of the holiday season. So that this one, yeah, is gonna have definitely like day trips and adventures, but it's also gonna be like a really rich, retreating kind of like breathwork, yoga, dancing. Well, the Airbnb we got is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's
Oh my
so
gosh.
delicious. So we're thinking like there'll be less like running out on the road all the time like we
Yeah.
did with the hiking trip.
Yeah.
And this one is gonna feel like really restorative.
Mhm.
I love it. That's amazing. Well, if you guys are okay with it, I'm going to end with some rapid fire questions.
Fun.
Yeah.
A little fun, so you can both answer them all. Go-to coffee order.
Oh man, decaf latte, lactose free.
Yum. Oh, yum.
Americano with cream.
Favorite comfort food.
Sarah's cookies.
Also my cookies, yes.
Same answer.
If there's not a reason to sign up for a doula, now the cookies is the reason.
The sourdough with butter.
Yeah, Sarah makes her cookies for all
Amazing.
of our prenatal class, and then whatever ones don't get eaten, I put in my freezer, and I
Oh.
hoard them so that I always have access to them.
Okay,
That's
legit every
incredible.
class she's like, please don't eat them all because I want them to put in the freezer.
Save some for my freezer. That's incredible. Last TV show you binged?
Oh, perfect match.
Body Problem.
3 Body Problem.
Oh, and then Bridgerton.
Bridgerton, that's a good one. Favorite way to practice self-care?
Working out, yoga, CrossFit, running, walking, all of it, all above, movement.
Love it.
Right now it's like watching my chickens. No, I would say same. Yeah, CrossFit and walking and talking to my husband. Man, the poor man. I think his ears are probably just bleeding. I just like talk at him so much, and he's so great at
That's so
listening.
special. Oh, I love that. And lastly, one thing that people would be surprised to learn about you.
Oh gosh. That I have my brown belt in karate, and I quit before I got my black belt, which is like the most
Oh my gosh.
non-brag ever.
You might need to go back to finish it up.
No.
That's amazing.
I had my twins of 39 weeks and 5 days unmedicated. Does you care about that?
Holy smokes. Yes, I care about that. That's incredible.
So you didn't know it was twins until like 34 weeks. That's pretty wild.
32, yeah.
Yeah.
32 weeks, my midwife is like, okay, too much water, big baby, twins, or wrong dates. And I'm like, well, we had sex once, so it's not the wrong dates. Big baby, yeah, probably that. I'm probably eating too much. Then went and got the ultrasound, and sure enough, it was 2.
Oh my goodness. That is so wild.
I never worried about having them prematurely because I just...
You were already past it almost.
Yeah, you were already past. That's incredible. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. For everyone listening, you can find Lara and Sarah at Dynamic Doulas. Also, as mentioned before, at Women Wandering Wild and at dynamicdoulasoflondon.com. Thank you so much for joining.
This is so great. Thank you so
much. I love you guys.
I
Oh, thank you.
Bye.